From an early age, we are taught that control is the key to success. We control our emotions to appear strong, our words to be accepted, and our routines to be productive. We try to control our relationships, careers, and even time, attempting to bend reality to our will. The feeling of control gives us security. We learn that if we plan every detail of life, everything will go as expected. But in reality, this pursuit of control traps us. Anxiety arises when we realize that life is unpredictable and that, no matter how hard we try, we will never have complete control over events. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more the sand slips through your fingers. This happens with everything: relationships, success, happiness. The attempt to exert excessive control does not make us stronger. It only pushes us further away from what we truly want. Alan Watts describes this paradox simply: the desire for security and certainty is a trap. If we try to hold on, we become tense and anxious. But if we let go, we find true freedom. The need to control every detail of life does not make us stronger. It only makes us more anxious, insecure, and frustrated. Today, you will discover why letting go of control does not mean losing, but rather gaining true power over your life. The desire for control is a silent trap. At first, it seems logical and even necessary. We want to ensure that things go as planned, minimize risks, avoid disappointments, and achieve security. But as this need intensifies, we enter a vicious cycle that is hard to break. First, we feel uncertainty, the doubt about the future, the fear of what might go wrong, the anxiety of not having all the answers. In response, we try to take control. We create rigid expectations, obsessively plan, and seek predictability. First, this might seem to work, but inevitably, life unfolds unpredictably. When things slip out of our control, frustration sets in. This frustration then drives us to seek even more control, reinforcing the cycle of anxiety, tension, and dissatisfaction. The human brain is wired to seek patterns and predict the future because this gave us an evolutionary advantage. The problem is that the modern world is not as predictable as we would like. When something doesn't go as expected, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning, goes into overdrive trying to find solutions. If solutions don't appear, the amygdala, the part of the brain linked to fear and the fight-or-flight response, takes over, triggering constant stress and worry. The body releases cortisol, the stress hormone, putting us in a continuous state of alert as we try to anticipate problems that may never even happen. And the more we try to control, the more we realize that we have no control at all. This gap between expectation and reality creates a sense of helplessness, often leading to mental and emotional exhaustion. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." This means that instead of eliminating uncertainty, we end up increasing our own suffering. In relationships, for example, the need for control comes from the fear of losing someone or the expectation that the other person will fit perfectly into our idealized vision. In the workplace, the same pattern appears in the obsession with perfectionism. The fear of making mistakes or not meeting high standards can paralyze us. We spend more time planning than executing, meticulously reviewing every detail, and ultimately delaying important decisions. The fear of failure keeps us from moving forward. The pursuit of happiness also becomes a paradox. The more we try to force happiness at any cost, the more we feel like something is missing. All these attempts at control do not give us power. They only amplify the feeling that we are always chasing something unattainable. There are moments in life when the best choice is not to paddle against the current, but simply to trust the flow. Think about situations where you stopped forcing something, and surprisingly, things started to work out on their own. That job you lost made way for something even better. That relationship you thought was irreplaceable gave space to a more genuine connection. The problem is that we have been conditioned to believe that letting go is the same as failing. From an early age, we learn that giving up means losing and that only those who fight tirelessly achieve success. But is that really true? If we observe nature, we see that nothing resists its own flow. A tree does not fight against the wind. It bends and adapts. A river does not try to push the rocks aside. It patiently flows around them. Life follows its own course, winding through unexpected turns, overcoming obstacles, and finding new paths without resistance. Yet most of the time we swim against the current, trying to force the water to go in the direction we want. As a result, we feel increasingly exhausted, frustrated, and as if we are always struggling against something greater than ourselves, moving further away from ease and peace. When we learn to trust, to adjust to what happens without excessive resistance, we begin to see that the current is not dragging us away. It is carrying us exactly where we need to be. There is deep wisdom in not resisting. At first, it may seem contradictory because we have been taught that life requires effort, that success comes to those who fight tirelessly, and that yielding is a sign of weakness. But in reality, the struggle is what keeps us from what we want. This is where the concept of Wu Wei comes in, a Taoist principle that means acting without forced effort, in harmony with the natural flow of things. Wu Wei is not about passivity or inaction. On the contrary, it is about acting wisely, knowing when to intervene and when to allow things to unfold on their own. Think of a martial arts master who does not meet an opponent's force with more force but instead redirects it, using it to his advantage. This is the essence of non-resistance. Lao Tzu wrote in the Tao Te Ching, "By letting go, everything resolves itself." This does not mean we should abandon our goals, but rather that we should learn to trust the process. Trying to rigidly control everything only creates tension and exhaustion. When we accept that not everything is under our control, we begin to act with greater clarity and calmness. Science also supports this idea. The state of flow, studied by psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, shows that people perform at their best when they are not forcing results, but are instead fully immersed in the experience, allowing it to happen naturally. Athletes, musicians, artists, and entrepreneurs often describe this state as a moment when everything flows effortlessly. A state where the mind is not struggling but simply present. This principle applies to all areas of life. It means stopping the attempt to change others and instead allowing connections to develop authentically. Trusting in one's own work and talent without forcing paths that clearly are not opening. No longer resisting difficult emotions but letting them come and go like clouds in the sky. Wu Wei teaches us that life has its own rhythm, and when we stop fighting against it, we find more peace and purpose. True power does not lie in force but in the wisdom of knowing when to move forward and when to simply allow things to take their course. The idea of letting go of control can feel terrifying. To many, it sounds like a recipe for chaos, as if life would collapse the moment they stopped holding everything together with a firm grip. The fear of the unknown makes us believe that if we are not in absolute control, everything will fall apart. Letting go of control does not mean abandoning responsibilities or living without direction. It does not mean neglecting dreams, goals, or commitments. On the contrary, it means acting wisely, recognizing what is within our power and what is not. There is a subtle but essential difference between being proactive and being obsessive. The first acts with awareness and ease. The second exhausts itself trying to predict and manipulate every detail of reality. Many of life's most important moments happen precisely when we let go a little. Think about how many times you held on to a situation that was clearly not working. A toxic relationship, a draining job, or a plan that just wouldn't come together. And then, the moment you finally let go, new possibilities appeared. When we stop trying to force our way, we create space for the right path to find us. Psychology confirms this. Excessive control leads to anxiety because it keeps the brain's alert system constantly activated. Acceptance and flexibility strengthen our ability to handle challenges and uncertainties more effectively. It's about changing our approach. It's understandable to fear letting go. But the real risk lies at the other extreme, holding on so tightly that instead of truly living, we are merely resisting. Letting go of control is not something that happens overnight. It is a process of unlearning, of reprogramming the mind to accept that not everything needs to be under absolute control. In practice, this means making small daily changes in how we react to situations. It starts with the awareness that anxiety arises whenever we try to hold on too tightly, whether to a specific outcome, a person, or a fixed idea of how things should be. Accept uncertainty. Instead of fighting the unknown, we can learn to see it as a space of possibilities. When something slips out of our control, rather than reacting with frustration, we can pause and ask, what if this is actually an opportunity in disguise? Many times, what seems like a setback is actually leading us to a better path than the one we had planned. Whenever you feel anxious about the future, take deep breaths and ask yourself if this fear is real or just created by your mind. Practice trusting the process. This does not mean waiting for things to magically fall into place, but rather acting without attachment to the outcome. We can dedicate ourselves to our work, relationships, and personal projects without needing everything to unfold exactly as we imagined. This eases tension, allowing things to happen more naturally. In everyday life, this translates into small actions. When we catch ourselves trying to control something that is clearly beyond our power, we can pause, take a deep breath, and consciously choose to let go. Letting go of control also requires emotional practice. Instead of suppressing uncomfortable feelings, we can allow them to come and go, like waves in the ocean. The more we resist emotions, the more they control us. But when we accept them, they lose their grip and naturally fade away. The most interesting part is that when we start applying this mindset, we realize that we are not losing power, we are gaining freedom. Suddenly, our days feel lighter. There is more space for the unexpected, and we have greater clarity in making decisions. Letting go of control does not mean giving up on life. It means finally learning to live it with greater wisdom. True power lies in surrender. The paradox is clear. The more we try to control, the more trapped we feel. The more we let go, the freer we become. True power has never been in rigidity but in flexibility. It has never been about dominating life but about having the courage to trust it. We are constantly faced with unexpected changes, losses, and challenges beyond our control. We can choose to resist, wasting energy trying to force reality to fit our expectations, or we can accept, adapt, and move forward with greater ease. The second option always takes us further. What area of your life are you trying to control too much? What would happen if, just for today, you let go a little and trusted more? Reflect on that. When we stop fighting against the natural flow of events, we begin to notice something interesting. Things tend to work out in ways we never could have planned.